A massive Ukrainian drone strike on the Russian capital overnight. According to Russian state media, defense forces intercepted more than 300 drones fired at Russia, with 91 of them specifically targeting the Moscow region. Officials say one person was killed and several others wounded. The attack unfolded just hours before critical talks between the U.S. and Ukraine on ending the war with Russia. That meeting in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, is set to begin in less than 2 hours. And it comes less than 2 weeks after the last U.S.-Ukraine meeting at the White House ended quite badly. This time, Volodymyr Zelensky is not expected to take part in the actual talks with the U.S., but the Ukrainian president is in Saudi Arabia meeting with the Crown Prince. The top American diplomat says he wants to know what concessions Ukraine would be willing to make, adding that these talks will be key in determining whether the U.S. will lift its pause on military aid and intelligence sharing. CNN's Claire Sebastian is following all of these developments, joins me here now in London. Claire, let's get to that massive drone attack we saw images of there in Moscow overnight. I guess the timing of this, unlikely to have been a coincidence with these talks set to get underway in less than 2 hours.
Yeah, Christina, look, we haven't officially heard anything from Ukraine on this very large barrage of drones, some 337 in total shot down in various different regions, 91 over the Moscow region, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Ukraine hasn't said anything, but I think, as you say, timing is hardly coincidental, coming ahead of these critical talks in Saudi Arabia. It was a fairly disruptive, not to mention destructive attack, one death. It's pretty rare to see deaths from Ukrainian drone attacks as far away from the Ukrainian border as this. I think there's only ever been one other in Moscow, and that was last September. So definitely noteworthy disruption as well, with airport closures and delays to flights there. And I think this is potentially, from Ukraine, a way of sending a message. Their long-range drone program is something that has been homegrown, that has proven extremely effective in this war in terms of hitting Russian military sites, energy infrastructure, and of course, on several occasions, the capital itself, again, far beyond the border. They claim, as of now, according to the defense minister, to be the world's largest producer of tactical and strategic drones. So this is, to quote the US president, a card potentially that they can play in this war and in peace talks. And as I said, this is happening on this extremely critical day diplomatically. In terms of what these talks in Saudi Arabia today could bring in terms of a path to peace, I think the expectations have been lowered somewhat by the US side ahead of this. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, saying that this is really more of an exploratory meeting, that the US will be in listening mode, he said, and they're really just trying to figure out which concessions Ukraine will be willing to make, which they will then present to Russia. Incidentally, a source familiar with the matter has told CNN that Steve Witkoff, Trump's Middle East envoy, is expected in Russia later this week. We don't know as of yet who he will be meeting with, but in terms of this meeting today in Saudi Arabia, I think the first job for Ukraine is to repair the damage from that Oval Office meeting less than 2 weeks ago. Marco Rubio saying that potentially there could be a deliverable there when it comes to unpausing U.S. aid. He said the meeting will be key, and if they come out and, quote, feel good about that, then potentially decisions would be made on that front. So it's a little nebulous what Ukraine is supposed to do, but I think the suggestion there is that they will have to continue with the sort of charm offensive as they try to repair that relationship and restore U.S. aid.
Breaking this morning, Russia accuses Ukraine of launching a massive drone attack on Moscow. Explosions seen rocking the city overnight. In all, Russia says more than 300 drones were fired, nearly 100 targeting Moscow, and 2 people were killed. In Ukraine, more than 30 people have been killed since last Friday. The war raging on as the possible peace talks finally resume. CNN's ELENA is standing by for us at the White House. Let's first go to Alex MARQUARDT in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia for the latest from there. What are you hearing? What is the latest, Alex?
Well, Kate, this meeting has been underway for almost 2 hours now here at the Ritz-Carlton in Jeddah. They are behind closed doors. We have seen that video of the 2 delegations at that long table with Saudi officials at the head, Rubio and Waltz on one side across from the Ukrainian delegation led by the Zelensky Chief of Staff, Andriy Yermak. The vibe from both sides is quite good after a week and a half of really tumultuous relations. But coming into this meeting, Secretary Rubio said that he is hopeful hopeful that it will go well, but it's clear that he wants to hear something from the Ukrainian side. He said that they are in listening mode. They want to hear what concessions the Ukrainians might be willing to give in order to achieve some kind of peace deal with the Russians. Now, a few of us reporters spoke with Andriy Yermak, Zelensky's chief of staff, ahead of this meeting. He declined to say what concessions specifically they could offer, but here's a little bit of what he did say.
Now we think it's necessary to discuss the most important how to start this process, and we're very open. And we want to have very constructive, deep, friend partners conversation with our American partners.
So the priority, Yermak is saying, is jump-starting this process. Kate, we should note the U.S. has not specified what concessions they are expecting the Russians to give. You talked about the military and intelligence aid that has been halted for Ukraine. Rubio is saying that this meeting is key to essentially getting that turned back on. And then we have this massive Ukrainian strike against Russia overnight, perhaps one of the biggest carried out by drones since this war began. More than 300 drones fired at Russia, certainly coming at a very symbolic time. Presumably, Kate, whatever comes out of this meeting between the U.S. and Ukraine will be communicated to the Russians as the U.S. tries to bring Ukraine and Russia closer together. And we have just learned late last night that Steve Witkoff, who is the Middle East envoy but very much involved in these talks, should be going to Russia later this week and could be meeting with Vladimir Putin. Kate?
Yeah, I mean, really what you're encapsulating perfectly is just how critical this week may shape up to be when it comes to trying to find a peaceful end to this war. Alex, thank you so much. Alex is going to be standing by, a lot to come out of Jeddah. But let's get over to the White House now. ELENA TURIN, as I mentioned, is standing by. ELENA, what are you hearing from there this morning about all of this?
Well, look, Kate, I think this meeting today is as much about trying to get the relations between the United States and Ukraine back on track after that, acrimonious Oval Office meeting about a week and a half ago now, as it is about trying to find really an off-ramp to this war and beginning in earnest the peace talks with Ukraine and Russia to find an end to this. But look, when I talk to White House officials, Trump administration officials, repeatedly what comes up in my conversations is they want specifics from the Ukrainians and Zelensky about what they are willing, as Alex laid out, to concede on. And that's really going to be, I think, a crucial part of this meeting today. When I spoke with one White House official, they told me that they're looking for Ukraine to commit to what they characterized as, quote, concrete deliverables for this peace process. And I've also spoke about this directly with National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. He has repeatedly said he needs to see some real specific action, specific things laid out by the Ukrainians for them to feel comfortable moving forward. Now, one thing just to keep in mind as well is just how fragile the relationship between President Donald Trump and Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is at this moment. Yes, we know that the president and many White House officials felt they were happy with that letter that Zelensky sent the president last week, where he kind of laid out all of the things that they were looking for following that disastrous Oval Office meeting. But the president is still very wary of Zelensky. Just this weekend, he argued again that he believes Zelensky is not grateful for aid to the United States. So all of that kind of playing out in the background of this meeting. But again, I think so much of this is really trying to get them back on track of the relations as much as it is really trying to move forward with peace talks. Kate?
Absolutely, ELENA, thank you so much. Just as the war rages on, thank you very much. ELENA TURIN is going to watch this closely from the White House for us.